How's it going, everyone? This is Nick from Comic Culture. We're going to do another episode of Nick at Night, reviewing the books, non-spoiler reviews of the books we got on October 13th, 2021. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. So we're going to talk about the books we picked up this past week. I'm not going to give away any major plot points. We do non-spoilery reviews here. So as always, we're going to start over in the big two over at Marvel. Only a couple Marvel books this week because I'm still backlogged on Immortal Hulk. We're going to start with Duggan on X-Men number 4. So we have the introduction of Nightmare, Doctor Strange. Spoiler alert a little bit, but there's a book called The Death of Doctor Strange that may or may not have happened in that book, but now we kind of have these guys that Doctor Strange kept in check, kind of running rampage on places. So Nightmare has gone in and he's kind of messing around in the heads with people in New York City, and he kind of messes with some of the wrong mutants in here. And we have one of our favorite girls in here. She's kind of reminding Nightmare of how powerful she is and what kind of a force she is. So it's a throwaway issue. It ties in very loosely to Death of Doctor Strange. If you want to read it just to kind of get the idea of what's going on and you're a completionist, then go for it. You're not going to miss anything big in this book. I don't believe at all. The only thing you're going to probably miss if you skip this is about 3 or 4 pages towards the end of the book. We kind of pick back up on the villain that we were introduced to in the first couple issues and kind of where he is right now, because we kind of lost track of him, or at least I've lost track of him. So I wouldn't necessarily think you need to get this book for the bulk of the story. You just need to get it for like the last 2 pages, which is unfortunate, especially at a $4 price tag. So it's a neat little gimmick book. The art is still pretty decent in here. It's not Pepe Larez, but it's actually pretty decent as well. So yeah, get it if you're a completionist. It's a very, very quick read. It's kind of like a holiday-themed read, kind of a gimmick. The last 4 pages give you barely anything to kind of progress the overall story. X-Men number 4, you can probably skip it. You're not going to miss a whole lot. Going over to Amazing Spider-Man number 76. So this is basically the run right after Nick Spencer's run. I hopped on board. I did not read Nick Spencer's run. This is by Zeb Wells and Patrick Gleason on the art. I did enjoy the art. Some of the faces and things like that, sometimes they're just washed away, or they're just completely filled in, which is kind of interesting. I prefer a little bit more detail when it comes to that. The overall story, basically, Ben Reilly is, the Spider-Man right now. Peter's out of commission. We learned about why in the previous issue. We learn more about Peter's current state, how severe his injuries are. And then we basically have a nice little conversation with him and Mary Jane and Ben Reilly. And so we kind of have a direction of where this is going. And so if you're not a big Ben Reilly fan and you are getting on board right now, like perhaps I am, this might not be the best book for you. Maybe you should skip the next 10 or 20 books. So I don't know if I want to keep reading it. I really want to get on an ASM title. I really want to get on it. I got Spider Shadow and I enjoyed that. I read when we were in Legacy like 800 when the whole Red Goblin thing was going on. I skipped the whole Nick Spencer run. I'm picking up 75, reading 76, and it's not Peter Parker. And they put him out of commission at the end of this book, essentially. So I wonder if we're going to have kind of like a little touch base, like internal monologue or some kind of dream state that Peter's going to be in while Ben's kind of handling business in the real world. I don't know what's going on. This wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. I'm hot seating it. I kind of want to keep reading it, but I don't want to sit through 20 issues that aren't going to matter. So is this going to matter? I don't know. And I'm worried that it's not going to be. Moving on to DC, we have Batman the Imposter from Tomlin, Sorrentino, and Belair. This was a great book. I really enjoyed this book. So it's not necessarily a year 1. It's probably like a year 2, 3, or 4, something like that kind of a story. Basically, we have Sorrentino on some killer art here. Just amazing. If you're familiar with Andrea Sorrentino, then you're going to be familiar with the kind of work or kind of art you're going to see in this book here. And of course, with Belair and everything on the colors, it's really, really interesting. And so Tomlin does a really good job of kind of putting you in Gotham, in Batman, but in a more personal story. Basically, he's operating under the guidance of his therapist, and so she's kind of blackmailed him in a way into continuing sessions beyond, what he wants to do. And so we get some pretty cool action scenes in here. Just, I love the angles that Sorrentino uses in here. I love the coloring and everything. It's just really, really interesting, I think. And so Batman's kind of been framed for murder. And so we have this police investigator who's trying to figure out, was it Batman who did this? Who has the most to gain? Who has the most to lose from this blackmailing, this framing of Batman? And then you have this layer of Batman trying to figure it out. So you have two people on opposite ends of the spectrum trying to figure out the same crime. And so it's pretty interesting. And so there's some obvious things, some obvious run-ins that kind of happen in here. It's a pretty cool book. I really enjoy it so far. It's really interesting. So I know we're kind of Batmaned out, but at least books like this add another little layer to it. And so I've actually really kind of enjoyed books like this, like Arkham City, even though it's not really a Batman book, it's more of an Arkham book. And so books like this in the realm, I'm not too bothered with. Books I am kind of bothered with, Batman, The Audio Adventures. The Audio Adventures, #1. This is that giant 80-page. It's the podcast basically in writing. I don't listen to the podcast. I don't know if it's completely translated right from the podcast into these pages. What I do know is it's a series of about 6-7 page mini stories focusing on different characters. It's not just Batman. There's Catwoman in here. There's some villains in here, things like that. And so you read it, and some pages, if they're drawn the right way, that kind of gives you the vibes of like the animated series in a way. There's nothing too remarkable going on in these books. They're very, very quick, fast-paced, basic stories. So it kind of reminds me of like the 80th anniversary stories you might read, where they're just pumping out a whole bunch of like meaningless stories. Yeah, they're fun. Yeah, they're cool. At the end of the day, they don't really mean much. And so I think you can probably skip this one unless you're just a giant fan of the podcast. Then, pick it up, of course. Or if you just kind of like little one-off short stories with Batman or Batman-centered characters, then go ahead and pick it up. I think you're going to enjoy it. But for me, I got through the majority of these stories and I was just like, okay, on to the next one. And it's a $10 book. So, think about that too. So going on to The Joker, this is issue #8 from Tynan. And March is on this one. So this book is it's suffering and benefiting from the same thing that we've been talking about for the last 7 issues. It's a book about the Joker. There's no Joker really in this book. We're more focused on Jim Gordon, which was a cool twist in the very beginning. But now we're several issues into this whole story. And I think the premise in the very, very beginning was so different, unique, exciting, and there's been no payoff yet. And we keep learning a little bit more, getting a little bit closer, and then they introduce a new element that kind of like sets it off the rail a little bit. There are elements in this overall story that are extremely interesting, I think, but they're kind of peppering in a bunch of other little side stories, things like that are kind of muddying the waters, I think. So we have Vengeance predominantly shown in this book, the relationship with her and Jim Gordon. We learn a little bit about her origin, which is really interesting and really cool. That's all really neat. The art is pretty good too. So I'm not kind of knocking it from a art perspective. I love the way Joker's drawn in this book. Gillian March just does a great job drawing Joker. I just love the red eyes and the face and the way that the shadowing is and the color that they use in this. And so, props to them for making a book that's visually appealing. I wanted this story to be 6 issues. I wanted the story to be concise, just gold every single issue, and have an ending in mind. I don't know where this ending is. Do they actually kill the Joker at the end of this book? They're probably not going to kill the Joker at the end of this book. You know what I mean? Is it an excuse to bring Vengeance into the Gotham mythos? And I'm not too familiar with Vengeance. I'm pretty sure she's a pretty new character, obviously, because we go over her origin here. And so is it an excuse to bring additional characters in? Is it an excuse to put a punchline backstory at the back of each one of these issues to kind of get people caught up on punchline and what she's doing since the Joker War? I don't know. I've liked Jim Gordon in this book. I like how bloody it is. I like, the mystery of this whole thing. But I don't know where this book is going, and I know Tynan's going to drop off of it in a few issues, and I hope it's not one of those issues that's going to go 19, 20, 30 issues long, right? I hope it's not a story that goes that long because I want an end. And I wish it was concise, and it's not. I'm going to keep going, and I'm hoping that Tynan wraps up his run in a satisfying way, and then whoever picks it up, I don't know where you're going to go from there. But we'll see. We're just going to keep riding it because it's never a bad read. It's just, not what I expected. That's it for the big two. So going over to one of my favorite books from the past couple times. It was from Blue Juice Comics. This is actually Billy the Kid by McLean and Gary. So this book came out of nowhere and blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. So we got an early release of this one a few months ago, something like that. And I read that one. And it's a pretty... It kind of starts off, you don't really know where it's going. I read the solicitation, but I kind of forgot about it. And if you flip through the art is extremely interesting. It's very detailed. It's kind of like monstrous. There's these bunny characters that are, they're essentially humans, but they're bunnies, right? They're all dressed up. They have societies, they have houses, they have dinner, they have festivals. So just kind of replace humans with bunnies in that one. This particular family is hosting a big party. This tornado comes through, essentially wipes everybody out, and there's a lone survivor. This one lone survivor, and so this person's kind of seeking revenge because the storm that came by is actually some kind of a god, like a tornado god, and it's kind of out in this revenge mission in a way. And he's being mentored by this character who's just unforgiving, ruthless, but extremely good at what he does. And so just imagine like a combination between Mr. Miyagi and Negan. I think that's pretty good. Mr. Miyagi, extremely capable, but very violent and very and curses all the time. And so it's just a really funny mashup. And their relationship kind of evolves over time right here. He's kind of following around. It kind of gives me an idea of, it reminds me of one of the newest Star Wars movies where Rey's just constantly pestering Luke to kind of mentor, train me. And he keeps shutting the door, but eventually the door opens. So it's that kind of a routine as well. So I absolutely loved this. We get a little bit of like a flash forward kind of a scene. It's like, this is the origin of the character and how they're training, like a training montage in a way, like the beginnings of what that is. And then we have a cool, like fast forward moment where, Billy's like, is already trained, already knows what's going on. It's very capable, very equipped. And they're hunting down all these different like gods out there to get leads on who actually took out the family. So really, really interesting book. I highly recommend it. If this is in your shop, go ahead and pick it up. I loved it. It's really cool. You should be able to order it through Diamond still. So go ahead and look it up from Blue Juice Comics, Billy the Kid, issue number 1. Put it on your pull list. I love this book. It's one of my favorite indie books out. I've only read one issue. Another killer book this week, and I was really hoping it would be. It was from AWA Upshot. It's ETER. So ETER was... It was solicited as basically like universal healthcare. Like there's a ER, there's a hospital somewhere. It's actually located on Earth. We learn inside this book, and they can handle all different species, all different kinds of aliens. They have all these weird, crazy ways of like solving and fixing all the patients and all their ills and stuff. So it was really, really cool. So basically we have this like hidden ER system inside of an existing hospital. This doctor kind of finds herself at the wrong place at the wrong time, helping a patient locally, and she gets wrapped into what this ER is underneath her hospital. And so she kind of has her own ways of doing things. She's bored in her ER position now. She gets kind of recruited based on the skills that she's able to bring into the situation, and some of the other caregivers in the alien ER really kind of appreciate her viewpoint and stuff like that. So they're trying to basically steal her from her current position. So the artwork is very simple. It kind of threw me off in the beginning. I've seen some other reviews that kind of said the same thing, but you kind of get over it pretty quickly because I think the story is pretty interesting, and it's really like a Men in Black kind of a scenario. There's actually some scenes in here that are pretty much exactly right from that movie when she kind of walks into the main like nurses station. It's kind of that same scene where J and K go down the elevator and the doors open up and like everyone's busy in the room walking around and there's aliens everywhere. That scene is in here too. So it's really interesting. Their methodology of how they're going to fix patients is funny. I like the humor in this. It actually made me laugh. Out loud in a couple different pages. I really enjoyed that. And there's a cool backstory in here too with a whole different artist. And basically it's I can't remember the movie reference right now, but basically they shrink down and they enter the patient's body and fight off the infection or parasite in the body. And then there's only a few different ways to exit the body. So it was pretty humorous in how they handled that. And the art was pretty cool. It reminded me more of like a cartoonish version of Oblivion Song in a way, the way they handled the backstory. So I need to see if this is an ongoing or not, or if this was just a one shot. If you do know the answer, let me know down below. if this is going to be like an ongoing series, because I'm definitely picking it up. One of my favorite books that I read. Going on to Dark Horse, we have Jeff Lemire's Maze Book. I always want to say Maze Box, but it's Maze Book. Maze Book number 2 from Jeff Lemire. If you liked issue number 1, I think you're going to love issue number 2. It's the same kind of thing. We have a couple more revelations in this book. We learn about where the mom is. There was no mom in issue number 1. This guy was completely depressed, walking around, living his life in a haze and a fog, as one would if they lost their child. And so we do get caught up on where the mom is. We get a little bit more hints as to what that phone call was towards the end. Was it a hallucination? Was it real? Are there signs around that he has to kind of interpret? And so we do learn a little bit more of, what this person's going to have to go through to kind of figure out this riddle. The art is very much the same. It's very much that 2-tone or 3-tone coloring. It's really scratchy still. They really use, there's some parts in here where there's just no dialogue and the color palette changes a little bit when he's like in a dream state. There's a lot of, there might be some metaphor things layered in here a little bit that I haven't quite unpacked yet, or some symbolism, some visual symbolism that I haven't quite unpacked yet. But I think they'll kind of present themselves as the issues come out, and I don't think it's anything we have to really dwell on right now. But it is something interesting to look at. And so there's a lot of cool comparisons to like his visions and then the real world, and so he's kind of have to navigate the real world as if he was in his dream state. And so he's going to have to figure out what to do, find the clues, and try to get to the center to find his girl. So yeah, really, really liked it. Everything I liked about issue number 1 is here in issue number 2. So I'm going to keep going on that for sure. All right, going over to Image Books right now, we have The Cursed Man-Eaters. This is issue number 4. So if you remember last month, they did that novelty issue, keep calling it that. It was basically a Cosmo magazine from like the 70s that was basically for witches or witchcraft related. And the entire issue, front to back, was that. No progression of the story that I can decipher. And it was really kind of a bummer because I really liked issue 1 and 2. 3 came out of nowhere and just delayed everything and brought us to 4. I don't know if it was a filler issue. I don't know what was going on there. If you have any insight on that, let me know. But issue 4, we're back into it. So where we left off basically is we have our main character teaming up with the boy who's usually over there at football camp. He has too many concussions. He joins craft camp, not understanding what craft actually meant. On night 1, so a lot of the other visitors go missing. Some of them get shrunk. And so now it's up to our main character and the boy to kind of like figure out what's going on. What's really cool is they pepper the story in with all these different like recipe cards for spells and things like that. And and I keep forgetting what her name is. The little boy's name is Bert because they reference him a couple times in here. They keep kind of telling you where you're going to go. There's a bunch of shrunken kids. They devote a whole page on transmutation, like the recipe for transmutation, the rules behind it, things like that, an explanation of it. And so they kind of supplement the story with some really interesting, like real world stuff, like real world to them kind of things, like a recipe book and things like that. It's really interesting. Another thing is she seems like the girl in the story. She must be from volume 1. I didn't read volume 1. If you did, let me know if this character's continued over from there, but it certainly seems like that. She seems extremely well equipped and knowledgeable about this island, about witchcraft, about all the expectations of somebody her age going to witchcraft camp. And so, she just kind of appears with like a poncho. And then the boy's like, "Where'd you get that?" She's like, "My pockets." And he goes, "That's funny. It doesn't look like you have any pockets." Then the next page, it kind of goes over as if it was a Girl Scout manual of these tie-dye cargo camp shorts. Innovative, stain-resistant tactical camp gear for girls on the go. And it has all these like hidden pockets with what you should be putting in those pockets to kind of help you navigate any situation you have. And so it's just really, really funny that he's just completely clueless. She's extremely knowledgeable and resourceful, and it's a funny dynamic. So basically, they're trying to get to a place where they can kind of transmutate these campers that were with them because they're in a fallen state, and there's all these threats everywhere. And so the little boy, you're kind of in his position because she knows what's going on. You're kind of learning through his viewpoint about where we're going, why we're going there, what's this spell do, what's the threat, all these things. And they keep planting all these little seeds here and there, like stay away from frogs. Like that's like a big rule at this camp. And we don't know why. We have no idea, especially if you haven't read volume 1. Maybe they covered that. We cover why you avoid frogs in this one. So the art is beautiful. There's a lot going on here. It's kind of anime-ish here and there, but not in a I'm going to say it not in an annoying way because I'm not into the anime style. But I think it's just beautiful. Some of the lighting and coloring that they choose in here is really, really interesting. There's some cool like scenes where they full page spreads where they kind of climb through some jungles, and not jungles, it's a root system underneath the tree, but essentially it has the same kind of aesthetic. And there's some cool little action scenes in here. So this was a really cool book. I'm glad we're back on track. I really enjoyed issue number 4, Maneater's the Cursed from Image. Check it out if you haven't. All right, and the last book we're going to go over is Ordinary Gods from Kyle Higgins. This is from Image Comics. Still not a fan of the series. I was barely a fan after issue 1, and I was hoping that issue 2, 3, and 4, and so on would help explain what was going on. And they did, but I don't think it's still very, very clear. So essentially we have a reincarnation story. We have these gods that used Earth as basically a prison system for their enemies, things like that. Things went south, wrong people got sent to Earth. And so the people on Earth that were sent there, their objective is to kind of gather everybody back up so they can have enough power or something like that to go back to their homeland. So that's essentially what's going on. The problem is every time that the person realizes who they are, these people try to hunt them down and kill them or something like that. And every time they die, they kind of lose their memories and they live all these different lives. And so our main character here is like their king or something like that. And he's lived all these horrible lives and good lives and things like that. And he kind of has these random flashbacks after you've been kind of after you've been awakened. You start having all these weird flashbacks, like he goes to Paris, for instance, and he's never been there before, but maybe he was there in a past life during a war, something like that. So they're trying to hunt down these different guys, and so it's not exactly clear. These guys are like stealing some kind of tech that they use to kind of help identify people. Anyway, it's still not very clear what's going on or what the objectives are, in my opinion. I think the overall premise is pretty interesting, although it's pretty big stretch to begin with. But then I don't think they've done a good job in explaining and keeping everything simple enough to like follow through and be interesting for each issue. So I don't know how many issues this is. Again, if you do know how many issues this is going to be, if they've announced that, let me know down below. If it's just 6 issues, what's 2 more issues? We'll just knock it out and read it. If it's going to be like an ongoing type thing, I don't know. I'll probably drop it. So the answer to that question will determine whether or not I get issue number 5, I think. So Ordinary Gods. So actually we had some pretty good ones. We had a couple bummers this week, Ordinary Gods being one of them. So as we do, I'm going to go through and pick out a few books that I think you should get if you're only getting a couple books. So I would probably start with, let's see here. Okay, so a couple books that surprised the crap out of me was Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid was one of my favorite books of that week. It's been out for a couple weeks now, but if you're able to get this book still, get it. This book was probably the biggest surprise about how much I liked it. So there you go. If you're looking for another Batman book, one with a slightly different take and has more vibes like the new Batman movie that's coming out soon, go ahead and pick up The Imposter. I've really been enjoying that issue as well. The art is fire. A book that I was hoping was really going to be good and it ended up being pretty entertaining and funny was ETER. Maybe because I was in the healthcare field and I've worked in ERs and things like that. Maybe I liked it more because of that perspective, but I think this was funny as hell. And I would pick that one up too. And then Maze Box, did it again. Maze Box issue number 2. If you liked issue number 1 like I did, you're going to love this one. And it kind of puts us into a direction. It's almost like a Labyrinth, Canto kind of a direction. So I'm really excited to continue that one. There's a few other weak ones. X-Men was really weak. Ordinary Gods was weak. Man-Eaters was fun. Joker was, Joker. Audio Adventures and Amazing Spider-Man, you can probably go ahead and skip those if you want to, or if you're just super interested. But that's what I got. Guys, go down below. Thanks for watching, first off. But go down below and let me know what your picks were. What books did you pick up? If you have any answers to any of the questions I had during the video, I really, really would appreciate it if you went down to the comments and put those in there. It kind of helps me frame this whole show and kind of keeps the interaction going, so I appreciate that. Like, subscribe, share, hit the bell notifications so you're notified of future videos and when I go live. As always, I really do appreciate you watching. We'll see you in the comments.